So one of the great things about today's session is that it's really just a conversation amongst friends. And as I was thinking about this, I realized that every speaker in front of me was going to have a set of slides, and it was going to be really hard to have slides if I had to listen to everybody else first. And so, and then do sort of a wrap up of what had been said. And so I have just a couple of slides because I thought I wanted to start with something that John, you mentioned, which is it's all about who that great teacher was in our life that really inspired us to go forward. And so I just wanted to talk for a few seconds about the person who inspired me and my favorite teacher. And my favorite teacher was a woman named Mary Schmeeman, and the year was 1969. Oops, this didn't move.
Next.
There we go. Got it. Please note the spelling of her name, because as many of you know, I actually can't spell. And so I had her for 2 years and misspelled her name every year on every exam and lost 5 points on every single exam for 2 years. And so 69, I was a very young 7-year-old starting the 3rd grade at PS 174 in Queens. She was starting her 2nd year as a teacher. There was an awful, I also have a picture of my, wrong way. That's my 3rd grade class. I'm not actually in the picture because I missed it, but she's there on the side. So lots was going on in 1969. Vietnam War protests, Stonewall riots, Woodstock, summer of Woodstock. John Lennon and Yoko Ono did their bed-in that year. The Beatles released Abbey Road. Led Zeppelin released their first album. In case you wanted to know, the Brady Bunch and Sesame Street premiered on television in 1969. And of course, most of all, what people think about in terms of 1969 is that man walked on the moon. Actually, none of that entered our classroom. Because for Ms. Schmeeman, the most important thing that happened in 1969 was the Mets won the World Series. That was the only thing we did. To her, the fact that this little startup expansion team was going to go on to beat the Baltimore Orioles, whom they were supposed to lose to, was just the greatest thing that could happen. All fall, what we did was we listened to the radio and we listened to baseball. We listened to every game that there was, because what she did was she said that baseball was about math. And every time somebody hit a single, we got an easy math question. Every time somebody hit a home run, we got a hard math question. I thought that baseball and math were the same thing, and that's what you did. And we just loved it. We actually only learned math that year, so that even after the World Series ended, all she taught us was math. I don't actually think she could teach any of the other topics if you want to know the truth. But she taught a class that was both boys and girls, that math was supposed to be what we did and what we understood and how we should live. And thankfully, we actually had her again as 6th graders. There we are, 6th graders.
Wait, are you in this one?
Yes, I am. I'm second from the right in the first row of seated girls, second from the right. Not an untypical public school class. There were 38 of us actually in the class at the time. And the good thing about her having taught us math for 2 years was the fact that I never actually learned math again until I was in 10th grade. I mean, sort of junior high school, they didn't bother to teach it at all. But what she taught us was that we could do it, we needed to do it, and that we shouldn't be afraid of it. I actually saw her a few years ago. No, more than a few years ago now. First of all, she got married and is no longer Ms. Schmeeman and has a name that you can spell, which I thought I got sort of ripped off by. But she but I can actually still hear her in my head. I can still hear her calling each of us up to bat and telling us that we need to swing at all these problems. And if the Mets won, we were going to win. And we did. I mean, it was true. And it's exactly what we've been discussing all today, which is it is about the teacher in your life. In your life, it is about the teacher. It is, as Norman just told us, 4 years of an ineffective teacher, or of ineffective teachers, series of ineffective teachers, and you're lost. 4 years of a series of effective teachers, and there's no cap to your opportunity. And as John started, and as we've talked about all day, it's about measurement. John explained that we value what we measure, and we measure what we value. And who likes measurement more than the folks at Robin Hood, right? This is what we live for. But we can't just measure and move on. We need to understand the performance to improve the performance. Tom, your work fulfilled something that we've talked about at Robin Hood all the time, is how are we going to do a random assignment of children? And because we can't say, okay, you're not going to get educated this year, so that we can figure out you're the control group. And so the fact that we were able to do those controls and randomly assign the kids, and then come with the data that says more effective teachers does cause students to learn more. And the implications of Valerie's work on how we teach teachers is enormous, obviously enormous. And how do we make sure that teachers understand the stereotype threat that you spend so persuasive about discussing? And how do we implement those interventions in schools? And so Norman, that's another one of his tasks, to put that into relay. And then again, at the end of it, we're data-driven, and we use data to inform our decisions, as well we should, but we don't ignore other factors. We just have to figure out what is the balance of this. Over the many years I've been at Robin Hood, I've actually had the privilege of being in many of your classrooms for the educators in the room. I've been sat at the table with many of your folks, and you've taught us all so very much. And so I think that we can't conclude today without I can't conclude today without a couple of thank yous. A thank you to all of the speakers who have taught us, not only taught us about what you're working on, but have also modeled for us how good teaching is done. And to Ray and to your team, I mean, you've worked so tirelessly and done such a tremendous job of putting this conference on this year and every year previous to that, and we appreciate it. This year is Robin Hood's 25th anniversary, and so internally we've been discussing what it is that inspires us. And what inspires me are John and Tom and Valerie and Norman, and the work that you're doing, and all of the work of the people in this room, both our old friends and our new. And you inspire teachers and school leaders and students every day. And it seems to me that in there, you will be instrumental to either being the teacher that somebody is going to talk about as their very favorite teacher, or in fact, making somebody else the teacher who is going to be their very favorite teacher. So thank you all for everything you've done.